My friend asked if I could give her a ride to the airport, and I said yes before I realized what that meant. Now I have to drive with someone watching me, judging every turn, every parking attempt, every decision I make behind the wheel. And, of course, she wants me to drop her off at the departures level, which means I have to parallel park or navigate the drop-off chaos while she's sitting right there witnessing my driving incompetence. I've been practicing parallel parking for weeks, but the moment someone is watching, I know I'm going to mess it up. It's like my brain just shuts down when I feel observed. I can parallel park perfectly when I'm alone, but add one passenger and suddenly I forget how steering works. She's going to think I'm a terrible driver, that I shouldn't be allowed on the road, that giving me a license was some kind of administrative error. And then I start spiraling about all the time I've wasted avoiding situations where people might judge my performance. How many opportunities have I missed because I was too afraid of looking incompetent? How much of my life have I spent hiding my flaws instead of just accepting that I'm not perfect at everything?
Emily, you're spiraling about driving with passengers? I can't even go to yoga class anymore because I'm convinced everyone is watching me fail at basic poses while silently judging my inflexibility and lack of core strength.
But yoga is supposed to be non-judgmental.
Tell that to my brain. Every time I'm in downward dog, I'm thinking about how my form is probably terrible, how I'm probably the least flexible person in the room, how the instructor probably wishes I would just stay home. And it's not just the poses, it's everything. Am I wearing the right clothes? Do I have the right mat? Am I breathing too loudly? Am I taking up too much space? The whole experience becomes this performance where I'm trying to look like I belong while feeling like a fraud.
But at least you're still going to yoga class.
Barely. And when I do go, I spend the entire time counting how many people are younger, fitter, and more graceful than me, which is basically everyone. And then I start thinking about how I'm 32 and I should have figured out basic flexibility by now. Like, when did everyone else learn how to touch their toes? When did they develop core strength and balance? I feel like I missed some crucial developmental window, and now I'm just getting older and stiffer while everyone else stays young and bendy.
You two were worried about driving in yoga? I spent 45 minutes this morning adjusting my camera angle for a video call because I was convinced my face looked weird and my background was unprofessional.
45 minutes?
45 minutes. I kept moving the laptop, changing the lighting, rearranging what was visible behind me. I tried 3 different shirts because one made me look washed out, one had a stain I hadn't noticed, and one made me look like I was trying too hard.
But it's just a work call, right?
Just a work call with my entire team where I had to present my project updates and look competent and professional. Instead, I spent so much time obsessing over my appearance that I was late to the call and barely prepared for what I was supposed to say. And then the whole time I was talking, I was watching myself in the little video window instead of focusing on the actual conversation. Is my hair doing something weird? Do I look tired? Am I making appropriate facial expressions? Am I talking too much or not enough?
So you were performing being in a meeting instead of actually being in a meeting.
Exactly. And afterward, I realized I had no idea what anyone else had said because I was so focused on monitoring my own performance.
But that's not even the worst part. The worst part is how much time we all waste on this stuff.
What do you mean?
Like, how many hours do you think you've spent avoiding parallel parking or practicing it in empty lots? How much time have I spent not going to yoga classes because I'm worried about looking stupid? How much time has Gianna spent adjusting camera angles instead of just showing up to meetings?
Oh God, when you put it that way, it's probably hundreds of hours.
And those are hours I could have spent actually getting better at driving or just living my life without worrying about other people's opinions.
Right. And I could have spent that time actually improving my flexibility instead of just feeling bad about not having it.
And I could have spent it preparing for meetings or focusing on my actual work instead of obsessing over how I look on camera.
So we're all trapped in these cycles where we're so afraid of wasting time or looking incompetent that we end up wasting time and being incompetent.
And getting older while we do it. Like, every day I spend avoiding yoga class is another day my body gets less flexible. Every birthday that passes is another year I haven't accomplished the things I think I should have accomplished by now.
And every meeting I spend worried about my appearance is another meeting where I'm not contributing as much as I could to actual projects that might advance my career.
So performance anxiety is literally preventing us from performing.
And time anxiety is literally causing us to waste time.
which makes us more anxious about performing and more panicked about wasting time.
It's like anxiety is creating the exact problems it's supposed to be protecting us from.
Right. I'm so worried about looking bad at yoga that I avoid practicing, which makes me worse at yoga, which makes me more worried about looking bad.
And I'm so worried about looking unprofessional on video calls that I spend all my prep time on my appearance instead of my actual presentation, which makes me less prepared and more likely to actually look unprofessional.
And I'm so worried about looking like a bad driver that I avoid challenging driving situations, which means I don't get practice, which makes me a worse driver in challenging situations.
So we're all sabotaging ourselves while trying to protect ourselves.
And time keeps passing while we do it, which makes the time pressure worse.
Because now it's not just about performing well, it's about performing well while feeling like we're running out of time to get good at things.
Right. Like if I was 25 and couldn't touch my toes, that would feel normal. But at 32, it feels like evidence that I've wasted my youth and my body is already declining.
And if I was just starting my career and felt awkward on video calls, that would make sense. But I've been working for years, so struggling with basic professional skills feels like I should be past this by now.
So we're performing under the pressure of imaginary deadlines about when we should have figured things out.
While actual time keeps ticking away as we avoid the things we're supposed to be getting better at.
And meanwhile, everyone else seems to be effortlessly good at driving and yoga and video calls and life in general.
But they're probably not, right? They're probably just better at hiding their struggles or not letting performance anxiety paralyze them.
Or maybe they're struggling with completely different things that we don't see.
But knowing that intellectually doesn't make it easier to stop feeling like I'm behind on everything and running out of time to catch up.
Okay, stop. If you just heard that and you're now calculating how many years you've wasted being afraid of parallel parking, we need to take a breath here.
Hi everyone, I'm Cora, and yes, that was me having an existential crisis about downward dog while simultaneously panicking about my flexibility declining with each birthday, which is a very normal Tuesday for me.
I'm Gianna, and I just admitted to spending 45 minutes adjusting my laptop angle instead of preparing for an important work meeting, which perfectly summarizes how performance anxiety makes you perform worse at the thing you're anxious about performing.
And I'm Emily, currently avoiding giving my friend a ride to the airport because I'm terrified of parallel parking in front of a witness. So this is What Me Worry, Episode 9, where we explore performance anxiety and the time panic that comes with it.
The thing about performance anxiety is that it's this weird combination of wanting to be good at things and being terrified that we're not good enough yet.
Right. And then there's this time pressure element where we feel like we should have figured this stuff out by now, which makes the performance pressure even worse.
Like, I'm in my late 20s. Shouldn't I be able to parallel park without having a breakdown? Shouldn't I have mastered basic adult skills by now?
Exactly. I'm 32 and I can't touch my toes. Every birthday feels like evidence that I'm falling behind on some imaginary life schedule.
And the worst part is that being anxious about performing badly actually makes us perform badly, which confirms our worst fears about ourselves.
So today we're going to talk about performance anxiety, not just stage fright, but the everyday kind where you're convinced everyone is watching and judging your basic life skills.
We'll dig into the time panic that comes with getting older while still feeling like you haven't figured things out.
Plus, we'll explore how perfectionism and performance anxiety team up to keep us stuck in these cycles where we avoid practice because we're afraid of being bad at things.
And we'll talk to Layla from Arizona, who wrote to us about returning to office work after managing her bipolar disorder from home and how the performance pressure of being normal at work is overwhelming her.
But first, let's acknowledge something important. If you're someone who feels like you're behind on life skills or worried about being judged for your performance, that feeling is incredibly common.
Right. Social media and comparison culture have created this illusion that everyone else has figured out how to be effortlessly competent at everything.
But the truth is, most people are fumbling through a lot of basic tasks and just not talking about it publicly.
Like, I guarantee that half the people in my yoga class are also worried about their form and wondering if they look ridiculous.
And plenty of people spend way too much time adjusting their camera angles before video calls. I'm not special in my insecurity.
So the goal today isn't to become instantly confident at everything. It's to figure out how to practice and improve without the performance anxiety sabotaging the process.
And how to deal with the time pressure without letting it paralyze us or make us avoid the things we want to get better at.
Because time is going to pass anyway. The question is whether we spend it hiding from challenges or engaging with them.
Even if we engage with them imperfectly.
Which we will, because we're human.
And humans are supposed to be learning and growing, not magically competent at everything from birth.
Let's talk about what's actually happening when we get performance anxiety. Like, what is my brain doing when someone gets in my car and I suddenly forget how to drive?
It's like you become hyper aware of every single thing you're doing, right? Instead of just driving, you're monitoring your driving while driving.
That's exactly it. You're splitting your attention between doing the task and evaluating how well you're doing the task, which makes you worse at the actual task.
So when I'm alone, I can parallel park because I'm just focusing on the mechanics. But when someone's watching, I'm focusing on the mechanics plus what they might be thinking about my mechanics.
Right. And in yoga class, instead of just trying to do the pose, I'm trying to do the pose while also monitoring whether I look stupid doing the pose.
Which means you're not actually present for the learning experience. You're performing the idea of learning instead of actually learning.
But why does being watched make it so much harder? Like, the physical task is exactly the same whether someone's there or not.
I think it's because when we're alone, mistakes are just information. But when someone's watching, mistakes feel like evidence of our incompetence that someone else will witness and remember.
And our brains treat social judgment as a threat to our survival, even though being bad at parallel parking isn't actually life-threatening.
So my nervous system is responding to potential embarrassment the same way it would respond to a predator.
Which explains why my heart races and my palms get sweaty when I'm struggling with a yoga pose in a room full of people.
The fight-or-flight response is not helpful for tasks that require fine motor control and concentration.
So how do we turn that off? How do we stop treating observers like threats?
I've been working on something my therapist calls perspective taking. Like, what are the people watching me actually thinking about?
Most of the time, they're probably thinking about their own stuff, not analyzing your performance.
Yes, right. When I'm a passenger in someone else's car, I'm usually thinking about my destination or checking my phone, not judging their driving skills.
And when I watch other people in yoga class, I'm mostly focused on my own poses or just zoning out, not critiquing their form.
Plus, even if someone does notice that you're not perfect at something, so what? Being imperfect at things is the default human condition.
But that's easier to know intellectually than to feel emotionally when you're in the moment.
True. So I've been practicing something called exposure therapy, but like baby steps version.
What does that look like?
I started going to yoga classes during off-peak hours when there are fewer people. Then I gradually worked up to busier classes.
That's smart. So you're building up your tolerance for being observed slowly instead of throwing yourself into the deep end.
Exactly. And I also started focusing on function over form. Like, can I hold the pose for the right amount of time? Am I breathing properly instead of do I look graceful?
I like that. Focusing on the actual goals of the activity instead of how you appear while doing it.
I should try that with driving. Like, instead of worrying about whether my passenger thinks I'm competent, focus on whether I'm getting us safely from point A to point B.
Right. The goal of driving isn't to impress people, it's to transport people safely.
And if you accomplish the actual goal, it doesn't matter if your execution was a little clunky.
But what about when you genuinely mess up in front of people? Like, what if I actually can't parallel park and my passenger has to watch me fail multiple times?
Then you're human and you're learning a difficult skill that many people struggle with.
And your passenger either understands that parallel parking is hard, or they're the kind of person who judges people for normal human struggles, in which case their opinion doesn't matter.
That's true. Someone who would judge me harshly for being imperfect at parallel parking probably isn't someone whose opinion I should care about.
Plus, most people are pretty understanding about driving challenges. Everyone has parallel parking horror stories.
The reality is that competent people know that competence comes from practice, which means making mistakes while you learn.
So maybe the goal isn't to avoid being witnessed while imperfect. Maybe it's to get comfortable being imperfect in front of witnesses.
Because that's the only way to actually improve at things that matter to you.
And to stop wasting time avoiding opportunities to practice just because they're not private.
Right. How many times have I declined to drive places because I was worried about my driving being observed? That's practice time I'll never get back.
And how many yoga classes have I skipped because I was worried about looking inflexible? That's flexibility I could have been building.
The anxiety is literally preventing us from getting better at the things we're anxious about being bad at.
So breaking the cycle means accepting that we're going to be bad at things sometimes, and that's okay as long as we're working on getting better.
And that other people seeing us be imperfect isn't a catastrophe. It's just Tuesday.
Because everyone is imperfect at most things most of the time. We're just convinced that we're the only ones struggling.
Okay, but let's talk about the time thing, because that's what really gets me spiraling. Like, it's not just that I'm bad at yoga, it's that I'm 32 and bad at yoga.
Right. If I was 22 and couldn't parallel park, that would feel normal. But at 28, it feels like evidence that I've wasted my 20s not learning basic adult skills.
This is such a modern anxiety. Like, our grandparents weren't worried about whether they'd achieved optimal flexibility by 30 or mastered all life skills by 25.
But why does age make everything feel more urgent? Like, logically, I know I can still learn things and improve at things regardless of my age.
I think it's because we have these invisible timelines in our heads about when we should have figured things out.
Right. By 30, you should be financially stable, physically fit, emotionally mature, professionally successful, domestically competent, and socially confident.
When you list it like that, it sounds completely unreasonable. But that's exactly what I expect of myself.
And every birthday that passes without achieving all of those things feels like falling further behind some imaginary schedule.
But who created this schedule? Where did we get the idea that competence has expiration dates?
Social media probably doesn't help. Everyone's posting their highlight reels and their achievements, not their struggles or learning processes.
Right. You see someone posting about their marathon time or their promotion or their perfect downward dog, but you don't see the years of practice or failed attempts that led to that moment.
Plus, we're comparing our behind-the-scenes struggles to other people's curated successes, which is completely unfair to ourselves.
But even knowing that intellectually, I still feel this panic about time running out. Like, what if I never get flexible? What if I never feel confident in my body?
I feel the same way about driving confidence. What if I'm 40 and still nervous about highway merging? What if I never feel like a competent adult driver?
But here's the thing. Time anxiety makes us rush through learning processes instead of actually learning effectively.
What do you mean?
Like, instead of focusing on gradual improvement and enjoying the process, we're frantically trying to catch up to where we think we should be.
So I try to force myself into challenging driving situations before I'm ready, which makes me more anxious and reinforces my belief that I'm bad at driving.
And I avoid yoga because I'm ashamed of my current level, which means I don't get the practice that would actually improve my level.
Right. The time pressure makes us either avoid practice or rush through it, both of which are counterproductive.
So what would it look like to learn things without the age panic?
Maybe focusing on progress instead of timelines. Like, am I more flexible than I was 6 months ago, regardless of how old I am?
And maybe accepting that different people learn different things at different rates. There's no universal schedule for human development.
I've been trying to think about it like this. Every day I don't practice something I want to get better at is a day I could have made a tiny bit of progress.
That's nice, but it also sounds like it could turn into pressure to optimize every moment.
You're right. I think I mean more like the time is going to pass anyway, so I might as well spend some of it on things I care about instead of avoiding them because I'm behind.
Right. Whether you're 32 or 35 when you finally feel confident in yoga poses doesn't actually matter in the grand scheme of things.
And whether Emily masters parallel parking at 28 or 30 doesn't change the fact that she'll have that skill for the rest of her life once she gets it.
So maybe the goal is progress, not perfection by a certain age.
And maybe recognizing that beating ourselves up about lost time is just another way of wasting time.
Oh, that's brutal but true. Like, I spend so much energy feeling guilty about the years I didn't do yoga that I don't have energy left for actually doing yoga now.
Same. I waste so much mental space on regret about not learning to drive confidently in my early 20s that I avoid driving practice now.
So the time anxiety is creating more lost time, which creates more time anxiety.
It's like a really depressing feedback loop.
But what if we just accepted that we're learning things at the pace we're learning them?
That sounds reasonable, but also terrifying. Like, what if I'm just naturally slow at getting flexible and it takes me 5 more years?
Then it takes you 5 more years, and you'll still be more flexible at 37 than you are now.
And in the meantime, you can enjoy the process of gradually improving instead of being miserable about not being done yet.
I guess the alternative is avoiding yoga for 5 years and then being 37 and still inflexible, but also having wasted 5 years being anxious about it.
Exactly. You can spend the next 5 years working on flexibility while accepting your current level, or you can spend the next 5 years avoiding it while being ashamed of your current level.
And when you put it that way, the choice seems obvious.
But why is it so hard to actually choose the obvious option?
Because choosing progress over perfection requires giving up the fantasy that you're going to suddenly become amazing at things without putting in the work.
And it requires accepting that you're going to be imperfect and learning for longer than you hoped.
Which means being uncomfortable with being observed while imperfect, which brings us right back to performance anxiety.
Everything really is connected, isn't it?
The performance anxiety, the time pressure, the avoidance, they all feed into each other.
But maybe that means that working on one piece can help with all the others.
Like, if I get more comfortable being imperfect in front of people, maybe I'll care less about being behind some imaginary schedule.
And if you accept that learning takes time, maybe you'll be less anxious about performing imperfectly while you're learning.
That actually gives me hope. Like, I don't have to solve everything at once.
Right. I can just focus on being willing to parallel park badly in front of my friend, and maybe that will help with the other stuff too.
Baby steps toward being okay with being human in public.
Time for our guest segment, where we talk to someone dealing with their own performance and time anxiety. Today, we're talking to Layla from Arizona. Layla, thanks for calling in.
Hi, everyone. So my situation is a little complicated. I have bipolar disorder, and I've been working from home for the past 2 years, which has been amazing for managing my condition. But now my company is requiring everyone to return to the office, and I'm terrified.
What specifically about returning to the office feels scary?
It's this performance pressure of having to seem normal and stable all day, every day, in front of my coworkers. At home, if I'm having a tough day mentally, I can manage it privately. But in the office, I feel like I have to perform being okay even when I'm not.
That sounds exhausting. Are you currently on medication for the bipolar disorder?
That's part of the problem. I went off my meds about 6 months ago because the side effects were really affecting my quality of life. I've been doing okay managing things with therapy and lifestyle changes, but that was with the flexibility of working from home.
So you're worried about managing both the bipolar symptoms and the pressure to appear professionally competent, all while adjusting to a completely new environment.
Exactly. And there's this time pressure element too, because I feel like I should have figured out the perfect treatment plan by now. I'm 35, I've been dealing with this diagnosis for 10 years, and I still feel like I'm fumbling through it.
Layla, can I ask, have you talked to your current therapist about strategies for managing the office transition?
Yeah, we've been working on it. But I still feel like I'm going to be performing this role of stable employee while internally struggling, and that feels unsustainable.
It sounds like you're dealing with multiple layers of performance anxiety. There's the basic work performance stuff that everyone deals with, plus the additional layer of managing a mental health condition in a public setting.
Yes, and I don't know how much I should disclose to my employer, if anything. Do I tell them about the bipolar disorder so they understand if I need accommodations, or do I try to just power through and hope nobody notices if I'm struggling?
That's such a tough decision. Have you looked into what kinds of accommodations might be available?
A little bit. I know I could potentially ask for things like flexible hours or mental health days, but I'm worried that requesting accommodations will make me seem less capable or committed.
But if the accommodations help you do your job better, wouldn't that actually demonstrate your commitment to being successful at work?
I never thought about it that way. I've been thinking about accommodations as admissions of weakness instead of tools for success.
Right? Like, if someone needed glasses to see their computer screen clearly, requesting that accommodation wouldn't make them seem less capable. It would just help them do their job effectively.
And Layla, about the time pressure thing, 10 years of managing bipolar disorder doesn't mean you should have everything figured out perfectly. Mental health is ongoing, not a problem you solve once and then you're done.
That's hard to accept, though. I feel like I should be more stable by now, more consistent, better at predicting and managing my episodes.
But think about it this way. You successfully worked from home for 2 years while managing your condition. That's evidence that you've developed real skills and strategies.
Exactly. Now you're just adapting those skills to a new environment, which is challenging but not impossible.
I guess I have been successful at managing things, just not in the way I expected I would be.
So maybe the goal for the office transition isn't to perform perfect stability, but to adapt your existing management strategies to a new setting.
And maybe to be honest with yourself about what support you need instead of trying to tough it out alone.
That makes sense. I think I've been so focused on appearing normal that I haven't thought about what would actually help me be successful.
For what it's worth, most people are so focused on their own work performance that they're not closely monitoring their coworkers for signs of mental health struggles.
Right. And the people who matter, good managers, supportive colleagues, want you to succeed and would rather know what you need than watch you struggle silently.
Thank you all. This actually helps me think about it as a practical problem-solving situation instead of a test of my worth as an employee.
Exactly. You're not broken. You're just managing a health condition while doing your job, which lots of people do successfully.
All right, everyone, homework time. This week, we're doing the Performance Pressure Release Challenge.
Pick one activity you've been avoiding or dreading because of performance anxiety. It could be driving with passengers, going to a fitness class, video calls, whatever.
Instead of avoiding it or trying to be perfect at it, practice doing it while being deliberately okay with being imperfect.
The goal isn't to suddenly become amazing at the thing. The goal is to prove to yourself that you can do the thing badly and survive the experience.
And notice what actually happens when people witness your imperfection. Most of the time, it's way less dramatic than anxiety brain predicts.
Also, practice talking to yourself the way you'd talk to a friend who was struggling with the same challenge. Would you tell them they're behind schedule and should be better by now?
Remember, competence comes from practice, not from avoiding practice until you're magically good at things.
And time is going to pass whether you're working on things you care about or avoiding them. Might as well spend some of it on growth instead of guilt.
Thanks for listening to What Me Worry. I'm Cora.
I'm Emily.
I'm Gianna.
And I'm Layla, and I'm going to have a conversation with my therapist about office accommodations.
We believe in you, Layla.
This was an AI scripted voice drama for entertainment and informational purposes only. If you're in crisis or need professional help, please call 988 or contact your local emergency services.
Take care of yourselves out there.
And remember, everyone is figuring it out as they go. You're not behind, you're just human.